You were on the campaign trail this past election cycle. Yep. I think we saw you out there more than we've seen you in the past.
Yep.
Did you like it? What'd you learn?
It was kind of fun, actually. I learned that the Democrats can't sell worse.
Well, billionaire Mark Cuban was one of Kamala Harris's surrogates. He was tasked with selling her to the American people, and maybe he had some difficulty doing that. Now, despite stumping for Harris, he is now admitting that Donald Trump was better at marketing himself during the last presidential election. And before we get to that statement, I'm curious what you think, Cenk.
Yeah, so I think Mark Cuban would have made a better candidate than Kamala Harris or Joe Biden.
Please stop. Well, I mean, that's a low bar.
Okay, so we'll talk about that. But I think he has a lot of culpability in what went wrong. I want to get to that as well. So, Anna.
All right, so let's hear what he has to say about Biden and Harris versus Donald Trump in campaigning.
They're so, persnickety about every little detail, and that's why the Republicans at the presidential level, I don't want to say kicked their ass because it wasn't like it wasn't a runaway, but yeah. Like I said, Donald Trump can sell. If you gave the Democrats a dollar bill and said you can sell these for 50 cents, they would hire 50 people to decide if they really, to try to figure out how to do it, and then would not know how to sell a dollar bill for 50 cents. If you gave it to Donald Trump and said sell this dollar bill for $2, he'd figure out a way, right? He'd tell you that $2 bill is huge. It's, it'll get you gold tennis shoes. It'll get you a Trump meme coin. That's the problem, and that's what I learned. And so I got to the point after the first event I went to, I said to the Harris people, you're not allowed to say a word to me. I don't care what you think. I'm just gonna do what I think is right. And that's what I tried to go out there and do. And I told them, I don't wanna go talk to Democrats. I wanna talk to Republican and independent business people. Because I truly believe that, chaos is bad for business. And that's what we're seeing now.
So he's half right, half wrong. So the part that he's right is their messaging is awful. And it's partly because of the bureaucracy. And I've seen the same thing that he's seen, right? So in order to make a decision, it takes 50 people inside the Democratic Party. And they're all getting paid and they're all taking money from the donations, et cetera. And so that bureaucracy grinds everything to a halt. Their messaging is awful. That's why-
Their message, it's not their messaging. They don't stand for anything. They don't stand for anything. They have no real identity at this point. They don't fight for the working class. They tell Palestinian protesters to shut the F up and brush them aside during campaign events, when in reality, Kamala Harris should have addressed that head on, but she was incapable of addressing anything head on, to be quite honest with you.
Yes, but that goes partly to my point, and I don't disagree with you at all. That's why I say there's two different issues here. So like Kamala Harris couldn't address anything because she didn't know how to do messaging, and she was frozen in amber. Like, what do I say? The 50 people that are in my campaign haven't approved this message. They haven't approved that message. I don't know what message to approve. Do you have any actual opinions? Do you have anything that drives you? And so if a Democratic committee told me what to say, I'd laugh my ass off. I'd say, okay, look, I'll take it under advisement. You give me facts, polling data, et cetera. I'll take a look at that. I want to know the information. But no, you're not going to tell me what to say because I'm running for something, right? So, and then when she went to do interviews, she was a hot mess. She was awful. So Anna, you're right, is a low bar, right? I would have taken Mark Cuban over Kamala Harris or Joe Biden because he's a functional human being and he could tell a story and he could connect with people and he's good on TV. So, but that's not, even though there's two issues, it's not 50-50. That is at most 25% of their problem. The overwhelming share of the problem is that they don't stand for anything. So that's why they don't know what to say. That's why they need to poll test everything. That's why they need focus groups and all the consultants to tell them what to say, because their head is empty. What they really think is, what do the donors want? And so that leads us to the problem with Mark Cuban. Well, brother, you were her main surrogate on cable news. I mean, every time we went to cover a surrogate, Mark Cuban was the only one on cable. And that's not his fault, by the way, that he's the only one on cable. They should have 200 people on cable. Oh, but we have to control their messaging. What if they say something 2% wrong? But by the way, Mark said a lot of things wrong. He kept talking about how pro-business she is and how the CEOs love her. And he doesn't get it because he's in his own bubble. Yeah, in your bubble, maybe that's a wonderful thing. But for the rest of the country, constantly talking about how the corporate CEOs loved her, hurt, it didn't help. It actually hurt a lot. because the country doesn't like corporate CEOs. And they're not like, oh my God, the business community, are they gonna be okay under Kamala Harris? They don't give a damn. And if they do, it's probably in the reverse direction. Is anybody gonna hold these sons of bitches accountable? And so good folks still can't get that through their head because they're in the wrong bubble.
There's no redeeming qualities of the current Democratic Party. None, not at all. There was nothing that was gonna save the Democrats in the last presidential election cycle. They didn't even try. They engaged in a cover-up in regard to Biden's mental decline. Then they anointed Kamala Harris, who is not at all a talented politician and has difficulty speaking in public, which is like politician 101. You gotta pass that class, and she was unable to pass that. And then on top of that, you have freaking Mark Cuban, who yes, is a billionaire and who's going on national television, going on cable news shows, and essentially going against some of the popular messaging that Kamala Harris put out early on in her campaign.
Yeah,
right?
So he probably has no idea the damage he did there.
Okay, let's go to an example of that. Let's watch. Specifically, according to Semaphore, Mark Cuban said this of Lena Khan: "If it were me, I wouldn't keep Khan on next year."
Bernie said that credit card companies should cap their rates, their interest rates at 15%. Donald Trump, being the socialist that he is, had to beat Bernie. So Donald Trump went out and recommended that interest rate caps be set to 10%. The fact that he's even suggesting price controls and price caps is socialism 101.
People have suggested she's going to operate even more to the left of Biden as it relates to regulation, potentially taxes, other things related to business.
Kamala Harris is pro-business. This is Kamala Harris's campaign. It's not Joe Biden's campaign, right? Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden. I've talked to the Biden administration, I've talked to the Trump administration, I've talked to the Obama administration, and I think the Harris administration has been most open.
So you have Donald Trump, who's cosplaying as a, working class hero, actually understanding the economic frustrations of Americans, right? And running on those issues. And then you have Kamala Harris with her billionaire surrogate going on national television to basically tell Americans, no, we don't want to cap credit card, fees and interest rates. We want to screw you. Kamala Harris loves that idea. And by the way, in addition to that, he also put his foot in his mouth and insulted women during an appearance on The View during the election cycle. Remember this?
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women, ever. It's just that simple.
It's kind of a difficult thing to prove when his campaign manager, Susie Wiles, was doing a great job. And then he later named her chief of staff, but his campaign had plenty of women in it. Like, it's just so tone deaf. I don't know what to say, but it's not my job to save the Democratic Party. And honestly, I'm gonna say this, it is shocking to me how little they've learned after the shellacking that they experienced in that election cycle.
So the reason why I say that they're incapable of learning is because they're not trying to learn. They don't realize they're in a bubble. It's the old story about you ask the fish, how's the water? And he says, what water? And so if you ask Democrats, including Mark Cuban, about what they're doing wrong, they'd be like, what do you mean we're doing wrong? So the best example is the one we've been talking about here. Do you know how popular it is to cap fees or interest rates of credit cards? And even if you disagree with that policy and you think, oh, well, the fees I can understand, but the interest rate, that could affect the market, and then it could lead to unintended consequences, blah, blah, blah. I get it, we should have that discussion when we go to policy. But as a matter of politics, if you go out there and you seem to be arguing for higher credit card interest rates or fees, that is the worst politics I could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And yet, they can't see that, because they're so immersed in that bubble that everyone around them is like, oh yeah, man, that's right. What a terrible policy to cap the interest rates and the fees on credit cards, right? And all the billionaires high five, everybody on CNBC agrees. And meanwhile, the ship is headed straight to the bottom of the ocean, right? So that's point one. Secondly, to Anna's point about what's there left to root for in the Democratic Party? Look, we just had a campaign where both the president and the vice president couldn't formulate a sentence. That's pathetic.
Yep.
And Joe Biden turned down the Super Bowl interview, the softest interview, and it reaches the most amount of people because he couldn't talk. And when he went on the debate, he bragged about how we were going to kill Medicare. Why? Because he has dementia. Okay. So then you turn to Kamala Harris, and what did we tell you guys from day one? We were worried about her word salads. And in the beginning, she was okay. She hung in there for about a month and had good plans about, hey, we're gonna stop the price gouging. Very popular. She rose up in the polls, and then they sent Mark Cuban out to go, no, we're not. We're not gonna stop price gouging. Oh, that's anti-competitive, blah, 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 blah. CNBC's ecstatic, and all the other voters hate it. Then she went back to word salads, and we were toast. Yep. She could not string together a sentence, but that's not the biggest issue. What caused that is the biggest issue. That they don't really care. Nothing drives them. They're not trying to get anything accomplished. They're just letting the donors pick the candidates, and the donors want incompetent candidates who will just listen to orders. If you had a strong, competent Democratic leader, would he just say, okay, billionaire number one, billionaire number two, what do you want me to do? No, he or she would say, this is the direction I'm leading. Well, Democratic donors hate that. So now, ironically, they turn around after the election, they're like, can you believe we don't have strong, dynamic leaders?
Come on.
Yeah, I can. And you know whose fault that is? Yours. I'm not blaming just Mark Cuban. All of the billionaire donors of the Democratic Party, they're the ones who demanded pathetic politicians who couldn't think for themselves, who couldn't speak for themselves. And then you dump this dumpster fire in the lap of Democratic voters and then pretend that you're the one who's trying to help or saw it the right way. No, sorry, you didn't see it the right way at all. You couldn't see the most obvious things in political history.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.